Hello guys, a warm welcome to every one of you to my YouTube channel. Today I will be explaining about the human circulatory system. So let's begin with what are the components of the human circulatory system. The human circulatory system contains a four-chambered muscular heart, blood vessels which include veins draining blood from various parts of your body to heart, and arteries draining blood from heart to various parts of your bodies, and the capillaries which join small artery, that is the arterioles, with small veins, that is the venules. The last component is the blood, which is the fluid circulating in blood vessels. And since blood is circulating in closed vessels, blood vessels, the human circulatory system is also known as blood vascular system. Study the location of the human heart. The human heart is located in the thoracic cage in between two lungs. The heart is located such that its axis is tilted towards the left. The human heart is derived from the mesoderm. Now, what is mesoderm? During embryonic life, the human body is made up of three germ layers: ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. Ectoderm is the outermost layer, mesoderm is the middle layer, and endoderm is the innermost layer. Thus, in simple words, we can say mesoderm is the middle layer of triploblastic human body. Now let us study the structure of the human heart. The human heart contains four chambers, two atria and two ventricles. The atria are smaller in size in comparison to the ventricles. The right atrium receives blood supply from different parts of the body via three veins. These veins are the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and coronary sinus. The superior vena cava drains blood from your head, neck, and upper limb, that is basically from your upper regions of the body, and hence is named as superior vena cava. Similarly, the inferior vena cava drains blood from lower regions of your body and is named as the inferior vena cava. These lower regions include your abdomen and the lower limb, whereas the coronary sinus drains blood from different parts of your heart. Now, the right ventricle gives off a artery known as the pulmonary artery. It is very important to note the pulmonary artery is the only artery carrying deoxygenated blood, hence it is drawn in blue color. The pulmonary artery then reaches the lungs. From the lungs, there is coming out of a pulmonary vein. This pulmonary vein is depicted red in color to show that it carries oxygenated blood. The pulmonary vein then enters your left atria. From the left atria, then blood reaches the left ventricle. From left ventricle, the blood is supplied to the aorta, which is the largest artery in the human body. The four chambers of the heart are separated by various septa or partitions. In between the two atria, there is the interarterial septum, whereas in between two ventricles there is the interventricular septum. The interventricular septum is quite bigger in comparison to the interarterial septum, whereas the atria are separated from the ventricles by means of arterioventricular septum, which are thick fibrous tissue. The atria and ventricle are also continuous with each other, but they are guarded by certain valves. Valves are known as the interarterial valves, denoted in black color. The valve guarding the right atria from the right ventricle, known as the tricuspid valves, because it has three cusps, whereas the valve separating the left atria from the left ventricle is known as the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. It is known as bicuspid valve because it has two cusps. Similarly, the right ventricle is separated from the pulmonary artery by semilunar valves, the pulmonary semilunar valve, whereas the left ventricle is separated from the aorta by means of semilunar aortic valve. The inferior vena cava is guarded by Eustachian valve and the coronary sinus is guarded by Thebasian valves. The valves mainly have the function of prevention of backflow of blood. It is such that blood will always flow from atria to ventricles and from ventricle to the artery. It is never that the blood will flow from the artery to the ventricles or from the ventricles to the atrium. Now let us study the conducting system of the heart. The conducting system of the heart basically contains auto-excitable tissue, meaning they can generate self-action potential. So this nodal tissue contains the SA node or the sinoatrial node located at the right upper corner of the right atrium. Then the AV node or the atrioventricular node located at the lower left corner of the right atria. From the AV node there is origin of the AV bundle. The AV bundle then divides in the interventricular septum into right bundle and left bundle. These bundles give origin to the Purkinje fibers. The Purkinje fibers are located along the ventricular musculature. Now, it is important to note that the different components of the nodal tissue do not fire at the same rate, meaning the rate of their generation of action potential is not same. For example, the SA node generates action potential at around 70 to 75 beats per minute, whereas the AV node generates action potential at around 40 to 60 beats per minute. It is seen that the rate of action potential generation in the SA node is highest, and thus it is responsible for the initiation and maintenance of the rhythmicity of the heart. Hence, it is known as the pacemaker of the heart. In case of failure of the SA node, you are to replace it with an artificial pacemaker. Now let's have a look at the internal structure of the human heart. Here you can see some ridge-like structures in the ventricle. These are nothing but the papillary muscles. The papillary muscles are connected to the atrioventricular valves via means of certain cord-like structures. These cord-like structures are nothing but chordae tendineae. Thus, the chordae tendineae functions to connect the papillary muscle to the atrioventricular valves, that is the mitral valve and the tricuspid valve. Now, everyone should note that during embryonic life, lungs are not functional. That means there will be no exchange of gases, and hence the entire process of the circulation of the blood from pulmonary artery to the lungs and to the pulmonary vein becomes useless, as there will be no exchange of gases. So the heart always tries to shunt the blood from the right atrium directly to the left atrium via an opening known as foramen ovale. The remnant of the foramen ovale in adult human is known as fossa ovalis. But in real, all of the blood is not shunted by the foramen ovale from the right atrium to the left atrium. Some blood reaches the right ventricle from the right atrium and from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. But since I have mentioned lungs are non-functional in nature, the passage of blood through the lungs is a futile process. Hence, the human body tries to shunt the blood from the pulmonary artery directly to the pulmonary vein via an opening known as ductus arteriosus. So with this, I end my video, guys. If you have liked it, please share, subscribe and hit the like button.